Before we start the questions, each candidate has an opening.
Libertarianism is grounded in the concept of liberty. But what is liberty? Liberty means that our bodies and our minds belong to ourselves. Liberty is lost when governments decide what is right or wrong regarding what we may do with ourselves. Every law that is tried to restrict or limit personal freedoms and personal liberty has failed. Governments and countries have criminalized prostitution or homosexuality, legislated what ideas we may teach our children, have criminalized the consumption of alcohol or other drugs. And what is the result? Our war on drugs has not diminished the consumption of illegal drugs. It has merely filled our prisons with non-violent citizens and created the most powerful and brutal drug cartel in the world. Prohibition did not reduce the consumption of alcohol. It created suffering through punishment and gave rise to organized crime. And ideas, like evolution, may be offensive to some, but ideas have a life of their own and cannot be extinguished. Liberty, which is personal freedom, cannot be restricted through laws. It can only be unjustly punished as it is expressed, giving rise to suffering throughout society. We're all libertarians on this stage, and you are libertarians here. I am hoping that this debate tonight will make clear the value of liberty in all things. The fact that liberty, its very existence, depends on privacy, and that it is the foundation of a sane and prosperous society.
On to questions. The main hits I hear about libertarians, a couple things. The first is we're naive. We're soft on terror. We don't understand the need to keep America safe. We're isolationists. Mr. McAfee, people say libertarians are isolationists.
Isolationists in terms of other nations? Not at all. I think isolationism is taking on the role of world policemen, making us a separate entity from the rest of the world. We're the policemen and you guys are the people that we police. So no, we're not isolationists at all. We are inclusive. What has created terrorism? Our interference in the affairs of foreign states, dropping bombs on families where mothers and fathers are killed, or brothers and sisters. I would be angry too. You would be angry too. So it is not isolationism to say that we need to bring our troops home, or that we need to stop interfering in the affairs of foreign nations. It is reality and practicality.
Please, when is it right to go to war?
My question is, why do we have war? I mean, we're operating under the assumption that war is a necessity. I don't buy that.
Another thing we're criticized for, libertarians are criticized for, we're soft on drugs. People think libertarian means libertine, and some say libertarians encourage drug use. Mr. McAfee, you first.
What is a drug? I mean, almost everyone in America drinks alcohol. This is a drug. Coffee is a drug. Cigarettes are drugs. Being soft on drugs, what does that actually mean? I think what's happening now, we declared war on everything, including drugs. Why? Because certain people prefer alcohol to marijuana, or certain people prefer marijuana to heroin. What is the difference? A heroin addict's addiction is its own punishment. We don't need to punish people more. Is that being soft? No. You are responsible for the repercussions of your choices, and if you are taking drugs, you've got to live with that.
Okay, would you cut the welfare programs for the poor? Who will take care of the helpless?
It's a very complex issue, Mr. Stossel. Let's look at Social Security Administration. It is the second largest drain on the federal budget at over $700 billion. And yet, everyone on Social Security paid money that they worked hard to earn into a system that the government promised would pay them back when they were older. Now, that is a commitment that we made as a government. And as libertarians, do we not meet our commitments? Seriously. It is an obligation. It's the obligations we are not meeting which is the problem. The veterans, here's another issue. We send young men and women off to war saying, go and risk your life and your limb for your country. And when you come back without limbs, well, we're sorry. You know, we'll give you the lowest possible care. This is the problem. Thank you.
One thing Democrats, Republicans, and libertarians agree on is that it's government's job to protect us from foreign threats. It's here in the Constitution. But people say libertarians won't make us safe. Mr. McAfee, as president, what would you do about ISIS?
That's an easy answer. I'd like to first start, I didn't get a chance to say which program I would cut. I think the FDA serves a very limited purpose, and so that would be the first thing I would address. What would I do about ISIS? ISIS is a problem of intelligence gathering more than anything else. I mean, we have the capacity. Certainly, is anybody doing terrorist acts inside of China or inside of Russia? No, it just doesn't happen. They are so far ahead of us from a cybersecurity standpoint, meaning intelligence gathering in the modern age. We should know well in advance before every terrorist attack on the planet, and yet we do not. We do not. Or if we do, we're not telling anybody. It's one of the greatest tragedies. We need new training. We need to make ourselves up to date. We are 20 years behind the Chinese and the Russians.
That alone would protect us?
I'm sorry?
That intelligence alone would protect us? They want to murder us.
Can I give you an example? Okay. We have the capacity, using pattern recognition, without having to listen to anybody's conversation or invade anybody's privacy, to determine what a terrorist cell is. They have anomalous communications. Leaders will take a different phone and throw it away every day. They use only outgoing phone calls. When a terrorist attack is about to happen, there's a flow from the chain of command. These things are easily identifiable in today's cyber science world. We're not applying them. I'm sorry. And so if we could protect and prevent every attack, would that not help us?
Someone called Hopebringer asks, will you end all foreign aid? Mr. McAfee.
Well, again, we have commitments as the U.S. government to a number of other foreign governments that do not involve policing them. And these commitments, if made, we have to keep. I'm sorry. We do have allies, and we do have enemies in this world. If you think we don't, you should look at what China has been doing to us for the past year. Took 21 million records from the Department of the Office of Personnel Management. It broke into the Pentagon, the FBI, Homeland Security. We are at war with China. We are. This is a fundamental issue, and we're simply not paying attention to it. So we have to keep our commitments to foreign nations, but at the same time, we've got to stop policing the world. We can't be the world's policeman anymore. We have problems here at home.
Mr. McAfee, when I
Googled... You have a hard time picking and choosing.
I did have to pick and choose. When I Googled you, you sound a little flaky. You went to Belize. Police there accused you of unlicensed drug manufacturing. You were a person of interest in the murder of a neighbor. You left Belize, went to Guatemala, which deported you to America. You're still technically a fugitive, though they don't seem that interested in grabbing you. Here in America, you were arrested for driving under the influence of Xanax. Yes. Why should people trust you?
Well, I mean, let's look at the absolute facts. What are the chances of my survival if I were actually manufacturing illegal drugs in Central America? Please. All right, if I were really doing that, I would be second half-life. So that's issue one. And number two, I was never charged with murder, and certainly not a fugitive from justice. That's an absolutely incorrect statement. You can all that web. So that's utterly false. I did indeed escape into Guatemala. Why did I have problems? I was asked for a $2 million donation to the ruling government. I said no. Exactly 1 week later, my property was raided by 42 armed soldiers who shot my dog in front of my eyes, tortured me, and destroyed $500,000 worth of my property. That was a problem I had with police.
And DUI in Tennessee.
Oh, yeah, the DUI. That was the most foolish and stupid thing I've ever done. I own up to it. All right.
All right, back to issues. Ford Fisher sent us this video.
Small government Republicans who are unhappy with Republican candidates may have a very clear reason to vote Libertarian. How would you sell yourself as the Libertarian nominee to disenfranchised Democrat voters?
Governor Johnson.
Disenfranchised Democrat voters, the website I side with. I think that everybody should get on that website, take the 36 questions, see who you pair up with. Now, I had issues with the site. I took the test a couple of weeks ago, and I sided with myself 90% of the time. I think they've fixed that. But amazingly, the next person that I sided with was Bernie Sanders at 73%. So the initial reaction was, you got to be kidding. Then the next reaction was, I get it. I get it on the civil liberties side, on the social side, on the military intervention side. You know what? This is a fit. I advocated for legalizing marijuana. I'm the highest official to do that. Although Bernie rolled out of bed, I guess hit his head. I'm glad that he's now advocating for the same. But there is a real connection there. There's a real connection.
You wanted to add something?
Well, I just want to say that, yes, Governor Johnson has stated that he does side with him on social issues, and we had a big kerfuffle in Oregon last week because Governor Johnson has stated that he believes that bakers should be forced to bake wedding cakes for people that they disagree with, homosexual couples. And this is a big problem because we're running for president as a libertarian.
Is he correct in quoting you?
Yes, but I think that if you discriminate on the basis of religion, I think that that is a black hole. Look, I think you should be able to discriminate for stink or you're not wearing shoes or whatever. But I'll tell you what, if we discriminate on the basis of religion, to me, that's doing harm to a big class of people. And right now,
should a Jewish baker be required to bake a Nazi wedding cake?
I think Muslims right now in this country... I think Muslims in this country would be banned by all sorts of businesses right now because it would be the popular thing to do.
So the Jewish baker
should
have to bake the cake for the Nazi wedding?
That would be my contention, yes. And the example that I cited was, the example I cite is, how about the utility that the utility that is privately owned, and because it's the only market that I have to buy my electricity, they're going to cut me off for religious reasons.
Mr. McAfee, get a chance to weigh in there.
Well, if you're the only baker in town, it may be a problem. But no one is forcing you to buy anything or to choose one person over another. This is the issue. So why should I be forced to do anything if I am not harming you? And am I harming you by not selling you something? No. It's my choice to sell, your choice to buy.
Well, I vetoed hate crime in New Mexico. I mean, look, prosecute me on the basis of the crime, not my intention. I think that religion is a black hole in that same category. That if you're going to start discriminating against people because of religion, you're going to find a whole class of people discriminated against, and you may be included in that. So it's harm to others.
This betrays a fundamental lack of understanding of the free market. You have to allow the marketplace to work. The government cannot stamp out bigotry. The government is not supposed to make us into better people. That's not what the United States was founded on. The United States was founded so that we could be whatever we wanted. Now, I hate bigotry, and I would stand outside these people's store and I would encourage a boycott. I stand up for my friends for their gay rights. And everyone should be equal before the law. But let the bigots out themselves. Let's know who's going to do it. Who wants to eat a cake from someone who hates you?
Out of time, Austin. I get your point. Mr. Peterson, when you introduced yourself, you made a point of saying you're pro-life. You would have government ban abortion?
We're back with our
Libertarian
every non-coercive measure that we can to end abortion, and there are options. Ending the federal war on drugs would allow women to purchase birth control over the counter.
But would you have laws on abortion?
The president has no authority to enact laws on abortion. The Congress writes the law. But we should be morally pro-life. All humans deserve the same right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and we should find every opportunity we can to save lives.
Want to make any points on that?
I think this is where Austin and I disagree, and my apologies, sir. I think that a woman's right to her own body is one of the fundamental issues in this country. And more importantly, I do not think it is the federal government's job or the state government's job to interfere in this process. Thank you.
How can there be a decision more difficult than abortion, and who should be making that decision other than the woman involved? No one.
All right, lightning round. Do you support the death penalty? We'll start with you, John.
It's the most barbaric thing imaginable.
Austin. Gay marriage? Any position? Gay marriage?
Well, I met Austin in a gay bar. No, as long as you grant me the right to a heterosexual marriage, then you may marry who or what you please. So.
Yes, I do support marriage equality, and when you say get government out of it completely, what I came to find out is that there are literally thousands of laws on the books, and you would have to go through, if you got government out of marriage, you would literally have to go through and change every single law, as opposed to just recognizing marriage equality. You wouldn't have to change the word in any of these laws.
Women are paid less than men. Should government be involved in fixing that? Governor Johnson.
First of all, women should be paid the same as a man, equal pay, equal work.
Government should get involved in that?
But the devil's in the details, and having vetoed as many pieces of legislation that I have, I would find it hard to sign that legislation. But I would keep an open mind to how that legislation got written. But I will tell you, the devil's in the details.
Mr. McAfee, should government intervene?
I think that people should be paid based on what they do and their talents and their productivity, rather than whether you're a man or a woman or anything else.
But who decides, government or the business?
Pardon?
Who decides, government or the business?
Well, the employee decides, does it not?
Government
there's more than one business in the world. If you don't want to work for this employee, work for somebody else.
What would you do about illegal immigration? Disagreement?
Yeah, our country was founded on the principle of open arms. All of our ancestors were immigrants, and so why are we trying to shut our borders and keep people out? But they have to be documented. If I have to be documented, well then I think immigrants as well should have to be documented and made legal.
Mr. McAfee, you've said, as did Milton Friedman, you can't have open borders and a welfare state. So you would shut the border until you took down the welfare state, or how would you do it?
You're assuming that I'm agreeing with that statement to begin with, which I do not. I don't think open borders and welfare states have anything to do with one another. I think it's the attitude of the government toward its citizenry that creates a welfare state. But I would like to say about letting Muslims in. What are we trying to protect ourselves from? Is it not ourselves? Did we not create terrorism by interfering in the affairs of foreign nations?
I just want to say that you left out a part of Milton Friedman's statement there, because when he said that you can't have open borders in a welfare state, then he followed up by saying that means that illegal immigration is actually superior. Why? Because then they don't qualify for benefits. So if we had a simpler path to naturalization, we wouldn't have the problem, but we should build a wall around the welfare state.
Trump says he supports free trade, but only fair free trade. He says our bad deals with other countries have cost Americans jobs. That leads to a question posted on Facebook from Joe Rafferty. How will free trade help the working class by way of employment, not just lower the price of goods?
If we have a problem with jobs and they're not enough, it has nothing to do with free trade. It has to do with the fact that our government has placed so many barriers to entry for entrepreneurs and new businesses. I mean, if the government would get out of our way, we would have more than enough jobs for people.
This is a new approach to jobs. Presidential candidates always talk about jobs.
I will be the greatest jobs president that God ever created. I tell you that.
We need a president that can create jobs.
Create good-paying jobs.
It's what they say all the time. Governor, what would you do to create jobs?
In 2012, they did an analysis because Rick Perry was beating his chest over being the biggest creator of jobs. Well, they did an analysis, and guess what? It was Gary Johnson. And my response then was the same as when I was governor. I didn't create a single job. Government doesn't create jobs. The private sector does. God. Government can create this level playing field, and I do think I contributed to that.
Mr. McAfee?
I have to, for once, agree completely with Governor Johnson. Here's the issue. Jobs are created by industry, by private business, and they are reduced when we impose barriers. When we impose excessive income taxes. In order to start a business, I have to fill out 1,000 forms and report to OSHA. This is the fundamental problem. If we remove these barriers, our industry will take care of itself and our jobs will improve.
Liberty is the opposite of license. We have got to get rid of the occupational licensing in this country. Why do you need a license to braid hair? The government has got to get out of the way. The Institute for Justice has been stepping in for this. If the government would get out of the way, why do I need a certificate to cut hair? Ladies and gentlemen, this is ridiculous. Occupational licensing is one of the greatest threats to liberty and entrepreneurship that we have. We've got to get government out of the way.
And taking off on what Austin said, having been governor and vetoed as many bills as I did, I got to tell you, I vetoed a few of those.
Good. On Twitter, one good question came from Daryl Perry. He says, Why did you limit your debate to only 3 Libertarian candidates? That's a good question, and I'll take the rap for that. It's my decision. I thought if you have too many people, you don't learn that much about any one candidate. These 3 seem to be the right amount to me. Candidates who placed lower in the early polls, I apologize, and I just learned that Darrell W. Perry is one of those candidates, so sorry, Darrell. To do to our own bodies whatever we want. And that leads many other Americans to say things like this.
So here's my question for the libertarian geniuses. You see the damage that heroin is doing all over the United States. You see it because it's cheap. And the cartels in Mexico are smuggling it here with very, very little interference. Imagine if heroin and other hard drugs were legalized here and distributed here, how much damage would occur. So how can you support that?
Mr. McAfee.
Okay. I don't know how many of you were alive in the 50s, but you could buy opium in the form of paregoric off the shelf at any pharmacy in this country. There was no opium epidemic because it was available legally. Absolutely not. Common sense. You know, if you were going and buying paregoric and your parents found out, you'd get a whipping, which is what they used to do in the 50s. Okay, so by saying we're going to legalize drugs, we're going to increase the consumption, absolutely not. The reverse usually happens. Why? Because children always want to do something which is a little bit bad, something that's exciting. If it's legal and you see people buying it and you have heroin addicts on the street, what is the damage that they're doing to society? That's my question. The damage they're doing is to themselves. And the damage that we do is assuming that we know what's right for you. You're going to be a better person if you stop doing heroin.
Sir Peters. All right, some people will get addicted, so Geraldo Rivera has a related question.
When covering the New Hampshire political primaries, the presidential primaries this year, we found an epidemic of heroin abuse and overdose deaths like I had never seen before. As a libertarian candidate, would you be in favor of government programs to help the addicts, and stem this epidemic of overdose deaths?
Mr. McAfee, government programs?
Well, here's the problem. We're assuming that you can actually help a heroin addict that does not want to be helped. I mean, as a former addict and alcoholic, I can promise you that until you hit bottom and you're ready to reach up for help, there's nothing anybody can do. Because if I want my heroin fixed, all of the goodwill in the world is nothing more than the interference of you into my life. Because you view me as something alien and improper. I'm the heroin addict, and therefore I need to be fixed. You can't do it. I've got to want to be fixed, and I've got to reach out to you first. You can't reach out to this. You cannot.
Lightning round. Moving on. Should we legalize prostitution?
My wife was forced into prostitution at the age of 20, and for 10 years suffered unimaginable hardships and physical abuse, mental abuse for 10 years under a vicious pimp. I personally rescued her 3.5 years ago and married her. And so my opinion is it has to be legalized, else it is the most inhuman of all things as being criminalized.
Should gambling, quick answer, should gambling be legal?
Absolutely.
Yes, all for them?
The best example of crony capitalism, the licenses that get issued have to do with being inside.
Yes. Correct.
When we return, a question from Judge Napolitano. We're back with our Libertarian Presidential Forum. Here's a question for you from senior judicial analyst Judge Napolitano.
What would you do to protect the Constitution today in an era in which no one alive has consented to it, and the president regularly violates it, and the Congress treats it like a blank check?
The founding fathers were smart enough to know that all governments will eventually become corrupt. This is what happens. As you gain more power, you gain more corruption. This is the facts of life. Embedded within the Constitution is the fail-safe, the Constitutional Convention, which can be convened by Congress or by 2/3 majority of the states, which we're already close to. So they anticipated that we would at some point need something else and gave us the option to do so through the Constitutional Convention. They were smart people. And we have reached that point. If anyone thinks our government is not insane, has not turned inward, has not invaded your privacy, and is not serving you, and instead they are becoming your mother and your father to order you around, this is the reverse role.
Governor Johnson.
Governments invade our privacy, but do not let us invade its privacy. This is the problem. So the Constitution has the means to save itself. So.
Closing statement time. Each candidate gets 45 seconds. We begin with Austin Peters. John McAfee.
In my opening statement, I said I hope that through this debate you would see the value of liberty in all things. And I hope that in the 2 hours that we have been debating and answering these sometimes very difficult questions, you have seen that some fundamental principles are all that we need to live together in a sane and harmonious fashion. We cannot hit one another. We cannot take each other's stuff. We must keep our word, our agreements, and our contracts. And that personal privacy and personal freedom are paramount to any society in which I would want to live, and you, I hope.
Candidates, good luck to you all. They now go back to the campaign trail. The Libertarian Convention will be held next month in Orlando. At that time, the party will pick its nominee. I assume it's one of these three. We hope this debate helped you decide who you would choose. And when we return, analysis from Reason Magazine's Matt Welch and Fox Business host Kennedy.